Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Free Thought Forum, brought to you by the friendly folks at Pennsylvania Non-Believers. We also refer to ourselves as PAN, P-A-N, for PA Non-Believers. I'm your host tonight, Doug Diggens, and my co-host is Jacob. Say hello, Jacob. Glad you tuned in tonight, and as always, first we'll bring you some of the events and the meetings we've got coming up for PAN. So if you'd like to do that.
All right, thanks. Our next meetup is in Lancaster on the 25th. Our next month we'll be having our annual meeting in York on the 7th. So be sure to come out for that. We'll be holding elections and discussing different policy changes for our organization. Then we have Lebanon on March 7th. I'm sorry, Lebanon on March 11th, rather. Harrisburg on the 12th, Chambersburg on the 17th, and our next show will be on the 10th of March. I should also note our first confirmed table for our summer table season will be on Mother's Day, May 10th, right here in York.
Yay! Can't wait.
Yeah, so back to you, Doug.
Okay, got anything else about conference or anything for right now?
No, I don't think we have any. I don't think we have any updates to speakers, or we have no new speakers confirmed. We're trying to work out one or two last ones, and no real update on the food drive since last time. I think we're up to around $3,200 of our $5,000 goal. So it's still progressing. But hopefully we can, as we get down the stretch, we should be able to reach our goal.
Great. The other day, I'm watching TV. I probably watch more TV than I should nowadays, but there seems to be a lot going on recently, programs about bullying in school, and it seems to be making headlines everywhere. That what can we do to prevent bullying? Well, if you want to really prevent bullying, don't send your kids to school, because it's gonna happen no matter what the adults do. I remember in school, myself, I was bullied because I was of small stature. I hadn't put on my manly weight yet. And, I was a target for the big football guys. And one suggestion to people that are being picked on is try to make friends with a big guy that'll act as your bodyguard, so to speak. If you in fact, this is probably where the heck I got my sense of humor from, because I found that if I could make them laugh, then they weren't punching me in the face. So, you can't avoid it. There's always going to be someone out there. But if you are being bullied in school, then I think it's safe to assume that by keeping quiet, nothing will ever improve. That you have to tell someone, whether it's your teacher, your parents, your best friend, or whatever, speak up.
Or either that, and make friends with the people you can make friends with. You're not gonna have everybody happy at you. So just try to obviously I think there's a difference between realizing it's going to happen and then accepting it's just going to happen. I think if you realize it's going to happen, you can prepare yourself better of how to deal with it. and not pretend we live in a perfect world where that's never going to happen.
Yeah, and let's face it, the parents or the teachers can never prevent you from being bullied.
Although I would say I think we can minimize it. If we start cracking down on it, you can start to minimize it. Because I think part of bullying comes from as people who were bullied as when they were younger, they're like, okay, now it's my turn. Is I think a big part of bullying. So I think if you can, I think being the first generation to not do that is going to be a hard thing to do.
Yeah,
is going to be a very hard thing to do. But I mean that's how you prevent the cycle. You stop the cycle of violence. Is be that generation that says no more.
Yeah, and also bring it out into the open.
That's true.
Because a bully likes nothing better than secrecy.
Right. Or even just accept it like it's a fact of life, I should say. And that's the thing. Even though we realize it's going to happen, we don't have to accept it like it's just a fact of life, and there's nothing we can do about it. Well, nothing we can do about it at all. We might not be able to fully get rid of it, but we should still make efforts to get rid of what we can. Is I think a big part of it, and that's what you're saying. A bit of it is, recognizing it as a problem, and I think that's part of the reason bullying might seem so much worse today. Is I think more and more it's finally being recognized as even being a problem.
Yeah. Because I know when it was my my turn, I was in school. People always said, "Well, this is part of growing up. You've got to take it, And why should I take bullying, be either physical or verbal? Because boy, I tell you, some of the comments that you got when you were in school. Right. I mean, it was nothing to be called all kind of names.
Right.
The same sort of, like if you were called those names now in public or at work or something, you'd retaliate. But as a kid, well, I don't want to be caught fighting, even if the other guy throws a punch, it's, gee, I don't want to fight back. Because then they'll blame me too, and they'll maybe expel me from school. Well, you've got to do something because you can't stand there and be beaten up all the time.
Right, and I mean, and it just definitely helps to talk to kids about it and help them through it. And I think that's one of the things that. I would say, like I've said this a few times, I was homeschooled from a very young age, so I didn't deal with that as much as probably most people did. But it was still like, there were certainly things later in life that I wasn't prepared for. Certain social situations I wasn't prepared for that I probably would have encountered in school. And I think sometimes you can turn it into a lesson about life, but. Again, I'm not having been there and seen it. I don't think I can really say too much about it.
Yeah. Well, as you can see, that really wasn't too much about religion, but it was just something that sort of caught my eye on TV. So I thought that I would just talk about it.
And that's often a good thing too. Sometimes it's we're not just atheists here. We're all human beings trying to build a better world.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to talk about those types of things.
Another thing that I was wondering, have you ever noticed when you are tuning in a program, like The Voice, America Can Sing or America Can Dance, and you see the singers that are on the screen, and they've got all the reverb behind them, the echo, and all the special effects, and it makes you wonder, what would these people sound like if they were just singing a cappella? Absolutely nothing there. Would they still have that, pristine voice? an auto-tune.
Right.
You know, it's, come on, you know, who is the real stars? And it makes me wonder when I sort of look back at all the different singers that I have sort of admired over the years. I wonder how many of them were really, you know, good singers
Right.
without the backup.
Well, it depends on how far back you go, because you know,
I go back a long way.
well, I mean, if you go,
Yeah.
I mean, if you go back that far, that kind of equipment didn't exist back then. I mean,
Yeah.
even just basic audio recording equipment wasn't that good back then. No, even 10 years ago,
Yeah.
the audio fidelity wasn't that great. So you also, so it was a little harder. It was a lot harder to manufacture a singer, so to speak.
Yeah. And the reverb and the echo, it wasn't electronic. It was a spring inside of a box. You send the signal in, and the spring vibrated back and forth and gave you this sound. And of course, now you've got so many electronic gadgets that it's tough to tell where the talent is.
Right.
Have another, go ahead.
Well, some of that depends. I think if you want to find it, see what they're like in concert. Because if in the concert they sound exactly like the studio, you know that it's all just pre-recorded and they're a creation of the studio.
Mm-hmm.
But some people, you can definitely tell the difference between them singing in concert and them singing in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where you can really start to see it. And I'm actually that's what personally, I love live music more than anything. Like I love going out on a Saturday night and, you know, seeing what bands are what local bands are playing.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a lot more fun.
I can't tell you the number of rock concerts that I've gone to, even way back like ZZ Top, and you know, one of the loudest bands in the world. I know that I had severe hearing loss when I got through listening to their concert. Yeah. But it's fun to see the people on stage, especially if you don't mind paying for seats that are a little bit closer to the stage. And hey, it was great. How about one other thing that bugs you? You ever gone into some place like, well, Taco Bell, McDonald's, Burger King or something like that, and maybe get something like a burrito, and you see a beautiful round burrito and it looks like it's about that round, stuffed full of meat and beans and everything else, and then they throw it on your plate and you get some flattened thing that's about that thick that doesn't have a quarter of what it shows in the picture.
Yeah. But are you bad-mouthing Taco Bell?
No, actually, I eat there a lot.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I like Taco Bell.
No, I know.
But I have mentioned it to them. Say, excuse me, I want the taco that was in the photograph.
No, yeah, I know what you're saying. I know. Yeah. But yeah, it's, you know, it's almost like, you know, it's like, yeah, I mean that's been a long time coming, and you know, people even talk about, you know, the magazine covers, the models they have are so photoshopped sometimes.
Yeah.
Like there was a recent one that featured Britney Spears.
Yeah.
But if you didn't know it was her, you wouldn't know it. Like
I think I saw that same one.
Yeah, where it's like they mixed the picture so much that it almost doesn't even look like her.
But also, there's a lot of photoshopping that goes on where you can definitely see that it's been photoshopped.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, you can see the line across. Yeah. You can see where they've drawn in a little extra bathing suit, or drawn in a little more skin where there was bathing suit. But yeah, that's right. Now, for the religious people out there, I do have good news. God is not dead. mainly because he never existed in the first place. But I'm sure that you evangelicals out there will be happy to know that God is not dead. Now, in spite of my insults and my sarcasm here, this is a live call-in show. And if you have any opinions or suggestions or anything like that, please give us a call, and we will pick up the phone and let you speak on camera. The only thing we tell you is that it's actually the broadcast that goes out has a 7-second delay in it. So if you're listening to your TV when you're speaking on the phone, you're going to think you're not on the air, and it's going to have weird echo. So if you're going to phone, turn your TV down before you do so. Where you live, Jacob, do you get many, I call them doorstep missionaries? They're the people that come knock on your door and want to tell you how Jesus loves you and is going to save you?
I can't say that I've ever gotten that in Newport. The only place I've ever gotten that was actually when I lived in Du Bois for a couple of years. I got a couple of Mormon missionaries.
Yeah.
But that was a funny story, actually. I was sitting. It was while I was going to college, so I was in a house shared by students, and I was up in my room. I kind of heard a knock on the door and somebody going to answer it, and then later on, a couple of seconds later, someone came up to me and said, "Hey, there's someone at the door to talk to you." I have never forgiven them for that.
That is rotten.
And I wish I would have thought of it at the time, but what I should have done was invited them in and gathered everybody around to talk.
And say, hey, listen to these guys here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been something fun to do, but unfortunately I didn't think of it.
No, we always think of our best retorts and replies
Right.
After the fact, after it's too late.
Right.
But hey, what the heck can you do? One of the what movie was it in? I know it was with Tom Hanks, and he was Meg Ryan. You've got mail. That's it. And he's saying that isn't it funny that you never ever think of the thing that you want to say at the time you would like to say it. And then, inevitably, if you do think of something nasty to say in reply to someone, you're instantly racked with guilt for being so nasty. And I thought, that's a pretty good comment. This past weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, I had a lot of people calling on the door, and they come with the Bibles in their hand, and usually come in twos. And I by the time I got the second one, I didn't want to hear him anymore. And I didn't want to get in an argument, because even after you shut the door, they keep talking to you through the door to convince you. And it's
Behold, he stands at the door and yells.
Yeah. And also, I've had 3 people over the weekend knock on my door that want to save me money if I now switch to their electric company.
Okay.
Okay. And a few hours beforehand, I just saw something on the Fox News about saying there's local scammers going around town
Nice.
that want to sort of suck you in to their plans, and it can actually cost you thousands of dollars. But once you sign on the dotted line, you're agreeing to just about anything.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like when somebody comes to your door trying to sell you something, they're playing off of this whole, well, it's a limited time offer. You know, as soon as I walk out the door, it's over. You can't.
Yeah.
That's why it's usually better to go to company sites and, you know, do that, not where something's supposed to be a limited. I mean, obviously, everything has some sort of limited time offer or deals, but the ones that are so imminent that, you know, it's like you've only got a few minutes to decide. You have to decide right now.
If he's looking at his watch, you know, this is a limited time offer,
Right.
and you go, no, it's not. You're going to go to the guy next door and say the same thing.
Right, and that's kind of like, you know, you look at, you know, you kind of tie that into Christianity, where they're like, oh, Jesus could be coming back at any moment now, and it's been 2,000 years of any moment now.
I got to admit, though, I did do kind of a dirty deed that was somewhat what you did there. The second guy that came around that wanted me to change my rate plan. And I said, you know, I just got through talking to some guy an hour ago that's wanting the same thing. He's going to save me money. I said, I tell you what, I says, I personally think it's a scam, but if you really want to save, you know, have someone save some money, I said, my next door neighbor right here, I said, that lives upstairs, this door right here, I'm pretty sure he'd like to hear from you. And I said, well, I've got to go now. Bye. Close the door, and then I hear him going, on the door.
Wow.
But I know the guy never answers his door, ever. I mean, if he's there, you know, so...
Yeah, I used to know someone who witnessed the telemarketers.
Yeah.
That's a good way to get them to go.
Well, you know, you chum the waters, you throw more bait in. Pennsylvania Non-Believers is actually the largest organization of its group of its type in central Pennsylvania. And as you heard from Jacob about all our different meeting locations, there we are spread out. When it first started here about 15 years ago, we were in just the York area, and we had a meeting in one place, and then we moved to a different location in York, and then we had one more meeting in Harrisburg, and since then we have grown to quite a large organization that is well known all over the country. And we are pleased to bring you this this live recording, like this live broadcast. So, like I said, if you'd like to call in, give some comments, ask a question if you want. Like that, we'll be here to answer you. Tolerance and coexistence are Pennsylvania Non-Believers, PAN's mantras. No matter who you are or what group of people that you belong to, intolerance begats intolerance, and hate always begats hate, hatred in return. You know, hate is like a pair of leather shoes. It's painful at first, but the more you wear them, or it, the more comfortable it becomes. And it really doesn't matter what someone did to your grandfather 100 years or so, does it? I mean, life goes on. At our current rate of escalation of hostilities, we are sure to experience a nuclear war, World War III, within 50 years. Now, maybe a lot sooner. I expect there is some consolation for the rabid evangelical Christian out there that expects Jesus to come back after the fighting is done and clean up the place, clean up all the mess. But for the people like us that know for certain that Jesus is just a fairy tale for results, a nuclear world war is a death sentence for us all. Good people and sinners alike. Now, we really should be focusing more on putting aside our differences and trying to get along. Now, I was going to discuss Jews. Yes, those Jews that everyone seems to dislike. But to a certain extent, I can understand why Christians hate Jews. After all, didn't a couple of dozen Jews shout out in a marketplace about 2,000 years ago, "Give us Barabbas," and thereby making hating Jews perfectly acceptable? Sort of like God sentencing billions of people to death just because Adam and Eve ate one lousy apple or whatever fruit it was. Of course, the credibility of both of those stories leaves a lot to be desired. Now, while historical records from 2 millennia ago show that there were literally hundreds of people that existed who were named Jesus back then. You know, it was a name about as popular as John.
I think 1 in 12 adult males were named Jesus.
Yeah,
something like that.
I was going to say I thought about 1 in 10, but yeah, okay, 1 in 12.
Something like that. Yeah,
something like that. So it was a very, very popular name. With so many people named Jesus, it must have been, it would be tough to pin any story down about a Jesus. Now, or at least back then. Now, none of the records or censuses showed that there was a Jesus of Nazareth, son of Joseph and Mary, especially any records that a preacher and doer of good deeds was crucified for blasphemy.
Which is odd because we actually know a lot more about John the Baptist than we do about a historical Jesus.
Yeah.
It's odd that we can even have a reasonable argument that there was no Jesus.
Yeah. Now, I mean, Jesus Christ did not exist except in the minds and writings of people starting at least 60 years or more after his supposed execution. And that's what it was, really. It was an execution. Right. Because the people of the time underwent so many years of suppression under the Roman Empire, naturally they needed a hero, a savior, the hero with 1,000 faces.
And oddly enough, Jesus actually sort of means hero savior.
Yes.
I mean, actually, I forget which one it means. I think it means savior.
So why not invent one?
Yeah.
Now, even before that nasty Barabbas incident, the Jewish people were looked upon as being inferior and, well, almost subhuman. while the Jewish people as a whole had done nothing overt to deserve such hatred by just about everyone. Yet, the Jewish people bring with them centuries of tradition, centuries of tradition, as well as monetary acumen. I mean, let's not throw that away. A lot of people say, oh, yeah, money-grubbing Jews. But the Jews, the Jewish people, are good with business. I mean, you can't take that away from them. They've also pushed the frontiers of science. And over the history, Jews are a credit to humanity. So why all the distasteful jokes and comments? As I stated, I tried to put in my voice and demeanor what the anti-Semitic population does. I really have no dislike for any Jew that I have met on any occasion. And I have met a few. I've met some rabbis, broken bread with them. And to be honest with you, I can't see any difference between them and a Christian. Now, I should point, however, that the land grab that is now named Israel, I have my reservations about. But then that's for another show. What I will say is that Israel is in the gun sights of a number of countries, and they are liable to drag the U.S. into something we would like to stay out of. The problem with the Jewish population of the world is that they are basically a peaceful people, and therefore have been conquered and enslaved for their entire existence. Jews are basically the scapegoats of civilization. So many despots have tried to wipe them off the face of the planet entirely. Still, they exist and go on in spite of their numerous attempts at annihilation. Now, I do not know if I necessarily agree with the numbers of the Nazi Holocaust. You know, they say 6 million Jews, like that. It's not important as to the number. People will argue with you, well, there was no 6 million Jews. But I definitely agree with the intent of the Nazis, namely, to correct, as they saw it, the Jewish problem. There is no Jewish problem.
Right, and I think one of the things you have to realize about it had been building for centuries. Literally.
Yes.
I mean, pretty much since the time of the Crusades, the Jews had been systematically getting wiped out for really reasons that I could never figure out. Like even if you consider what the Gospels say, it's still not justification. Because, and part of why I say that is, interestingly enough, some early Christians actually held Judas to be a saint, because they said, well, without him, the plan of salvation could not have gone forth. Is how some people viewed it. Now, later on, like in more modern theology, they consider him just a filthy little traitor that killed Jesus. But actually, I think the older interpretation of that, where, that was the plan to go all along, and he put everything in motion that needed to happen, is actually fairly accurate. Well, at least
it had to be. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense in the sense of, like, in the story he was placed in. But unfortunately, you see in the Gospels, what the authors of the Gospels are clearly trying to do is cast Judas as to be somehow representative of the Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, it's interesting because if you look at, of course, you look at John, the Gospel of John, it's like anti-Semitism left and right.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look in, say, the Gospel of Luke, which is actually one thing you can tell about Luke is that the author of Luke is he's clearly trying to reconcile the Jewish and Gentile churches.
Yeah.
And you can definitely tell that when he writes the book of Acts, where he tries to make it sound like Peter and Paul were just best buds,
Mm-hmm.
even though when you look at the letters of Paul, they hated each other. But in Luke, like he's not. There's a part where, like in the scene with Barabbas, where he tries to make Pilate look like he didn't want to do it, and this was meant to absolve the Romans of any guilt in this.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's also in Luke where he adds the line, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." He was also trying to get the Jews off the hook as well. And it's funny about that because, well, actually not funny, but kind of sad, is actually in later manuscripts, they actually tried to erase that line where Jesus is forgiving the Jews. And that's how early on, and usually what it seems to all be linked to is just the Christian influence on people's thoughts about the Jews. Now, I think although before that, I'm not sure exactly what would have inspired such hatred towards the Jewish people. I don't think they were. Maybe there was a little distrust because they were monotheist, and the polytheists weren't a little uneasy with them.
Yeah.
But there was still, they could reach at least an agreement. For example, they looked at like part of the reason the Roman emperors actually accepted the Jewish people, like to be part of Rome, they expected you to do certain ceremonies and sacrifices to the emperor's patron god, whoever it was, which the Jewish people actually refused to do. But what they did do, they actually were able to reach a compromise, saying, "Okay, we'll do our sacrifice to our God on your behalf, like on behalf of the emperor," and really the emperor, just seeking a little bit more harmony in the kingdom, said, "Okay, we can at least go with that."
Yeah. Well.
And actually, there were some Romans converting to Judaism prior to the time of Christianity.
Yeah, well, as they say, right? Give unto Caesar that which is Caesared, and give unto God what is God. The only thing is trying to decide which is which, really.
Right.
But the Jewish people, try to fit into society as a whole, especially. When the Greeks came and sort of conquered everything, and a lot of the Jewish population went to and were assimilated by the Greek population, and
there was actually a significant population living in Rome in the first century.
Yeah, and also in a place called, what was it, Elephantina, I think it was. But, to tell you how desperate some people were, you see, the Greeks, their idea of God was this person with a perfect body. And of course, they tried to make themselves beautiful, muscular and athletic and everything. And while the Jewish population was wanted to mix in with the crowd, there was one thing that they lacked. You know what that thing was? Well, it's going to sound terrible. Like that. Foreskin.
Yeah.
Like that. So what the Jews did back in those times, they tried to uncircumcise themselves. You know, it makes me shudder just to think about it. And they would use, you know, sorry guys, I know it makes you shudder, but they use weights and pulleys and ropes and everything to blend in. So when they were in the bathhouses, they would look exactly the same. Well, I'm sorry, but
Well, then
I wouldn't want to look the same that bad. I mean, that is.
well, I think that's also where they kind of there's also the part of the original Olympics they did.
Mm-hmm.
They actually did them naked.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, you couldn't cheat.
Yeah. Well, I think it would also do maybe wonders for ratings on today's Olympics, but that's besides the point.
Yeah. Although it would only be during the summer Olympics. I'm quite sure that there are no guys that would want to go out there naked for the winter Olympics. I mean, it's a blow to your manhood.
Right.
So talk about, you know, the incredible shrinking man, if you know what I mean. Oh, no, that was bad. Sorry.
Okay, I think we're crossing a few lines here.
Yeah, so,
If we haven't already crossed them.
okay, yeah, okay, I'll just have to rein it back here. What we look for here on this program is letters to the editor, things in the newspaper and on TV, especially like letters to the editor, because and those of a religious nature. Now, maybe Jacob, if you'd like to read either one of these or part of these to see what the people are thinking.
Right. This was actually from the York Daily Record Living section. Is an article called Voices of Faith, titled "How to Explain Jesus Saying He is Coming Soon," which is, how does one explain Jesus said he's coming soon more than 2,000 years ago? And I actually, before I start on this letter, I need to digress on this, because I actually read an interesting topic a couple days ago, where, when Jesus talks about the Son of Man coming in the clouds of glory, and it spells the end of days and such. Mm-hmm. There's actually a verse in Mark where he's clearly distinguishing himself from the Son of Man.
Uh-huh.
So Jesus and Mark actually didn't believe he was coming back, at least in terms of like a second coming. Mm-hmm. It's a rather interesting to think about how the theology changed between the Gospel of Mark and later Gospels.
Well, I often also think about, we talk about the second coming. Yeah. Well, when he supposedly rose from the tomb, I mean, wasn't that a second coming?
Yeah. But anyway, this article, they're asking a reverend, like, how is it that, they said Jesus is coming soon? He said he was coming soon 2,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it was very clear that the early Christians, especially the Apostle Paul, believed that. Even encouraging Christians to not get married, and if they are married, just kind of forget you are. Yeah. And he says, he starts quoting out of Matthew, where it says, basically, watch therefore, for you know not the hour the Lord cometh. Be you ready. There's also a part where Jesus gives a parable about slacking off just because the Lord delays his coming again. And there's a part in 2 Peter where it talks about, let's see, what does it say? I think that's the part where it says, one day is with the Lord 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness. And the Reverend goes on to say that somehow this refutes the skepticism about Jesus, which, no, it doesn't, because Jesus also very clearly said, when he was talking about the end of days, he said, all these things will be accomplished, like this generation shall not pass before all of these things be accomplished. And he also said something to the effect, like, you will not go through the cities of Israel, like, before all of these things are accomplished.
Ah, there's Israel
So,
again. Yeah.
It's like, can we really believe that there haven't been missionaries to every city in Israel yet? And
Oh, yes.
that's actually where there's this sort of, I don't know where it originated or who still believes it, but there's also the story of the wandering Jew that's supposedly been alive for 2,000 years just to make sure this prophecy hasn't been fulfilled, hasn't failed yet. It's actually something that some people have come up with.
I have heard that story, and I'm going, now they can't really believe that.
Yeah, it's one of those last ditch efforts.
But then again, people will tell you, oh yeah, but Methuselah lived for 1,000 years, so over 1,000 years, and Noah lived 900 and something. Why?
And one thing I would also point out here is they're saying that, even when you say one day is of 1,000 years to the Lord and 1,000 years of one day, that doesn't matter because he still told the people around him that it was going to be soon, and they understood it. They only understand it in their terms, not his terms.
In their lifetime.
So it's obviously, even if this is true, then Jesus didn't do a very good job of explaining what he meant. And I love this one line here. What this Reverend was saying is, let's see, it goes, quote, "The scriptures often tell us more about what people wanted Jesus to say than what he actually said." The projection in that statement, oftentimes people have this idea of Jesus like, oh, Jesus never sinned, when quite clearly he did numerous times throughout the Bible. And all sorts of other things about Jesus that people think he said or did, he didn't really do.
Well, it kind of makes you wonder how people can remember 60, 80, 100 or so years after he said it.
Right.
Verbatim what this guy named Jesus said as an offhand remark to a bunch of people he was preaching to.
It's especially suspicious when sometimes they seem to be quoting passages out of the Old Testament or otherwise, and saying that Jesus just said them, like they attributed those sayings to him. But I think one thing that's also interesting here, they also talk about the Book of Revelation, about the coming of Jesus in the future. Even though when it talks about, and one thing I should note here is he even admits that the Book of Revelation was probably written around 70 years after the life of Jesus, which I think should tell you something. Because, okay, they've been around for 70 years, what's going on? So it's easy for someone to just fake a vision and saying, oh, he told me this and explained it all. And I mean, the same could be said for 2 Peter. Because 2 Peter is almost universally agreed to be a forgery by every mainstream scholar. I mean, every non-fundamentalist even. And that's even true since ancient times. It almost didn't make it into the canon.
Well, for what it's worth, I mean, people will say that the Jews mainly, what they did was that they memorized scripture, and they memorized the canons so they could say it rather than read it. and this went on from generations to generation.
Well, I should clarify something there. That only applies to the high priest.
Mm-hmm.
It's a common misconception that every Jew knew how to do that.
Oh no! I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I've read too many apologists who seem to think that that it was every Jew who knew how to do that.
But I mean, still, the stories were still passed down after they heard them. But the point is that for something to be remembered and passed down, it would have to be thought to be significant at the time.
Right.
And why would all these this verbatim stuff of Jesus be considered anything other than a little sort of pat on the head? You know, I hope you feel better now. You know, and you're going to heaven, and you're going to meet your Lord, and you'll be happy forever. You know. Tell people what they want to. I mean, they were. Everyone was a slave, basically, to something back then. So why not make any promise that you want to give people hope? And a lot of the scripture, I think, is just beacons of hope rather than something that was said verbatim by anyone, even close to Jesus.
And one thing I would also point out is there's an excellent speech on YouTube. It's actually by Richard Carrier. It was on Rapture Day a couple years ago, like with what's his name, the one pastor who was trying to promote a rapture.
Oh yeah. When we went out bar hopping.
It was that. I can't remember the pastor's name off the top of my head. But
anyone in the. In a tech palace, remember what his name was?
Yeah, it's right on the tip of my tongue, but but anyway, there was actually an atheist conference on that day, and Richard Carrier gives kind of a summary of the end of days, how the different ideas of it progress throughout the scripture. Like first you have the book of Daniel start talking about the end of times, and like the Messiah would come just before it.
Yes.
Was kind of like the part of it. But the funny thing is Daniel is actually a forgery. They try to pass it off as something being 500 years old, but there's a pretty solid argument that it dates to 160 BC, not 500 BC like they're trying to represent it as.
I've heard you say that a couple of times. I have not seen references to that, but I certainly would believe it like that. But where did you, read about the forgeries of Daniel?
This is. I'm trying to think what the main source is. It was actually an early pagan who first realized this. I recently read a more complete argument out of a book by John Loftus. Like he has a book, Why I Became an Atheist, where it's a lot of scholarship on the Bible done. But unfortunately, like I don't have I don't know what the original source is, but I can't remember the pagan author who did this, but it's in, like I said, it's in one of John Loftus's writings. But what they've noticed is the prophecies are very precise and accurate up until around 167 BC. And then there's a prophecy it makes about something that happens in 160 BC that's completely off. And everything after that, every prophecy after that point is off. And it becomes more vague about what it's talking about. So they're like, that pretty much establishes it must have been written somewhere between 167 and 160 BC. That's a pretty perfectly logical conclusion. Why? Because up to that point, they're just writing history.
Yeah.
And now when it comes time to actually predict something, they're way off.
Yeah, well, it's like a lot of the the people nowadays, the same thing. You ask them to predict the future. Oh, I can tell you where your dead daughter is buried, and most of it's just guessing.
Right.
Anyway, but anyway, we're sort of getting down to the last few minutes of it. But one thing that I would like to throw in here, because I tend to be a movie rental person. Jacob prefers to get into the printed page, but I'll tell you, there's 3 movies that I saw since the last time that I was here, and that was Predestination, Lucy, and Gone Girl. Both excellent movies. Now, if you're a guy, you really should see Gone Girl. It's a suspense thriller, murder mystery, and it'll make your skin crawl, and you'd think that whether you're a man or a woman, you wouldn't want to be in the position that these people are in the movie. It's a thriller right to the end. The movie Lucy, that's about a woman who uses up to 100% of her brain capacity, and it's sort of like evolution on steroids. Very entertaining movie. And Predestination, yeah, a little bit of time travel in the thing, and it's also makes you wonder what the heck would happen really if what happened in the movie. Anyway, there's 3 movies that are worth watching. Looks like we're down to 3 minutes.
And if you want print edition, something in print, something in book, I've just about finished up John Loftus's book, Why I Became an Atheist, that I just mentioned a minute ago. Highly recommend it. Very deep philosophical arguments against Christianity, as well as evidentiary arguments. And one of the fun parts is sometimes he'll be arguing against a certain Christian doctrine, and to do that, he will take writings from 2 different apologists and pit them against each other.
Oh, good strategy.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of the book is he's taking showing how one Christian apologist is refuting another, and just letting them do the work for him. Yeah. And it's all throughout the book. It's very, very well done in that respect.
You know, Jacob, I think that you should do a book review, or at least partial review, on every show. Something that you've seen. I mean, I know it's put a lot of strain on you here, where now you have to read something.
Yeah. No, I've definitely got a lot to talk about, and I've definitely been meaning to put up my own personal reading list on the organization website. And when we get closer to Easter, I do want to talk a little bit about some of the books that discuss whether or not there was a historical Jesus. Yeah. That's a question I'll be exploring on a later episode. But we're running out of time here rather quickly.
Yeah, looks like
about 20 seconds.
It's running down.
As a reminder, our next show will be on March 10th. And if you can, make it to the York meeting on the 7th. That's our annual meeting for elections. Be sure to come on out. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah. And we appreciate you tuning in. We don't appreciate that you didn't call, but thank you.